From the dry scrub desert in eastern California, there are only half a dozen roads winding into the High Sierra. They rapidly gain a mile or more of vertical elevation before abruptly ending in tight slot canyons, narrow V-shaped wedges cut out of the surrounding peaks, crowded by vertical bands of granite cliffs and endless piles of rock. The walls of each canyon bulge in on three sides, blocking each afternoon's rapidly setting sun. Each has a full creek ripping down the center, with willows, pine, and birch trees hugging the banks and the surrounding underbrush blocking any view through or out of the canyon to the flat valleys far below. After driving many hours in the open scrub desert, I found this confined terminus claustrophobic. I unpacked the car in a pleasant little U.S. Forest Service campground, supporting only 5 tent sites tucked in among a circle of Jeffrey pines. Each site has a parking spot, a picnic table, a fire pit, a bear box, and a flat patch of leveled-out gravel to pitch a tent. There was only one other group around that night, 4 jovial guys enjoying a 12-pack while stoking an unruly campfire. I pitched my tent in the farthest site from them, so their voices would be muffled by the pines. I took everything remotely edible out of the car and locked it all up in the bear box. Besides food, this included toothpaste, medications, zinc oxide, sunscreen, camera, with a delicious leather case, and of course, food and cookware. It was a drought year, and even worse, summer was quickly coming to a close. Thus, it was a last chance for bears to stock up on calories before their winter slumber. I settled into my sleeping bag and stared toward the ceiling of the tent. A storm had blown through over the previous week, and at 9,200 feet above sea level, the cold came in fast after sunset. There was no point standing around outside shivering under a moonless sky that was quickly turning pitch black. I began to unwind after 6 hours of driving. I could feel myself making the mental transition that happens every time I head into the mountains alone. My sense of awareness, the space I attend to in the environment, was steadily expanding, stretching far beyond the flimsy nylon tent fabric, stretching to encompass much of the canyon grotto. Rather than mentally jumping from sound to sound, as a person might do trying to catch conversations at a cocktail party, I was listening to nothing in particular, taking it all in without focusing on any one sound over another. As it turned completely dark, sounds became more alive, more salient. I wasn't just listening. I was vigilant, reaching out into the space all around, trying to get as much from it into my awareness as possible. The vigilance I deployed is at the heart of any animal's physical intelligence, a detailed sampling of the environment to stay ahead of danger, to predict, and to respond. Vigilance like this, the kind that you rely on to stay alive, is quite difficult to study in a laboratory. What gets studied instead is a boring kind of vigilance, a person's capacity to stay awake while performing an exceedingly tedious chore. For example, a person might be asked to stare at a blank computer screen for hours on end, tasked with pushing a button whenever a plus sign unexpectedly appears. This is the dreariest of sentry duties and, not surprisingly, many experiments show that when a person is asked to do a pointless and boring task, drowsiness and performance failures will ensue. Contrast this with the vigilance I was employing. There was nothing boring about what I was doing that night. I was excited to be in that wild canyon to experience whatever might happen. There is another kind of vigilance that gets tested on animals, mostly mice and rats. In a typical experiment, the animal is put in a cage where it has already learned it will get an electric shock if something specific occurs, like an acoustic beep or a flash of light. Not surprisingly, its behavior changes as it anticipates the upcoming electric whack. While this kind of experiment does a better job at bringing danger into the equation, it still falls short of characterizing natural vigilance because the entrapped animal already knows the guaranteed injury to anticipate. The tortured are not vigilant. They are terrified. In contrast, in my tent, listening to what might be present all around me, I had only a vague notion that there might be danger, albeit at a very low level of likelihood. and I had many options for doing something about it. I was in a state closer to what you might find yourself in while alone in a sketchy parking lot late at night,